Hello and welcome to another edition of Chiodini's Kitchen video game recipes made real. Now this week's recipe, I'm going to be honest, has me feeling a bit nervous because it can be found in a game that's all about a family being cursed to die in a series of unfortunate circumstances, most commonly quite prematurely. So if you never see another video from me again, just assume it's not safe to make this. We're going to cook apple pie from What Remains of Edith Finch. So as I mentioned, What Remains of Edith Finch is a game about a family that appears to have some kind of curse on it. The game itself is made by the same people who made The Unfinished Swan, which is a really lovely narrative game about grief. But anyway, in What Remains of Edith Finch you can find yourself a pretty comprehensive recipe for apple pie, so I thought I'd give it a go. So according to the recipe itself, you will need 6 cups of sliced, peeled, tart apples. That's 950 grams if you were wondering, which sounds like an awful lot, but I'm using some Granny Smiths because they're nice and tart, and it equates to about 8 of them, I think. Anyway, you'll also need 2 tablespoons of water, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, half a cup of sugar, that's about 100 grams, half a cup of packed brown sugar, 3 tablespoons of plain flour, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground ginger, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And then the recipe just says pastry for double crust pie, so we're going to use the same crust recipe we used a few weeks ago when we made a pumpkin pie from Stardew Valley. So you may remember that requires 90 grams of softened butter, 65 grams of caster sugar, 3 egg yolks, and 200 grams of plain flour. So step 1, unsurprisingly, we're going to make the pastry. So I'm going to do this fairly quickly because we've shown it on the show before. You may remember that step 1 is to cream together the butter and sugar before adding in 3 egg yolks, one by one, into the mix. Right, and once that's done, we just add in 200 grams of plain flour and mix to form a dough. Right, there's our dough, and I've given it a quick knead, and now I'm just going to cling film that and put it in the fridge. Right, so now we've made our basic sweet short crust pastry and it's chilling in the fridge, we need to peel, core and slice all of our apples. And of course, because again this recipe comes from a game that's all about people being cursed, be very, very careful when using a knife. Right, and there we go, that's all of our apples chopped. So the next step is to transfer those into a saucepan along with the water and lemon juice and cook them until they have started to go tender. The recipe doesn't say whether it should be lid on or lid off, but to be honest I'm assuming it's lid on, so they kind of start to kettle and stew a little bit, so we can make a nice pie filling. Right, so it's only been about maybe 5 minutes or so, and to be honest this step is going a lot quicker than I thought it was. You should be able to see in there, these apples are looking really rather tender. I might give them just 1 or 2 minutes longer, and then we're going to take the heat off under them and leave them to cool. And then we're going to get on with finishing off the pie filling and putting the whole thing together. Alright, so all of our tender apples have now finished cooling, so the next step is to take all of the dry ingredients, that's the sugar, the flour, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the ginger and the salt, and put them into a bowl. And once that's all kind of mixed together, we're going to tip in the apples and stir them to coat, and that's the filling, basically. Right, so here's all the dry ingredients. The lumps you can see are lumps of sugar, but it shouldn't matter too much. If you are worried, you could always sift your ingredients before you throw them in. But anyway, either way, here comes a whole saucepan of apples. That's not fun or easy to do one-handed. Give me one sec, I'll put the camera down. Ta-da. Saucepan full of apples. Get the camera back up again. There we go. And we're just going to start stirring all this together so it coats nice and evenly. Picking up the camera again was a mistake, to be honest. I'm not going to lie to you, that was a mistake. But at least you got to see what it looked like for a few seconds. There you go. So here we have our pie filling, and it is at this point, because we're very close to having a completed pie, that we need to start preheating the oven. I'm going to preheat to gas mark 8, which is 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which I believe is 230 degrees centigrade, I think. So at this point you want to get your pie tin involved. This one is about 8 or 9 inches, I think. It's probably 8 rather than 9. And you also want to go to the fridge and get out your pastry, because it's time to start rolling it out and actually assembling this thing. So first things first, before I do anything else, what I'm going to do is divide my pastry, come on, roughly in half. Because, as you may remember from the start of this recipe, it's going to be pastry to do like a double layer. So effectively you're going to line the tin and you're going to put a lid over it. So we need to save half of the pastry back and just work with what we've got. So what I'm going to start doing here, come on, work with me pastry. So I'm going to start rolling it out nice and gently and with any luck evenly, so I can coat the inside of the pie dish. Okay, right, well, I'm not going to lie to you, everybody, that took more attempts to roll out than I'm really comfortable admitting, but more or less we now have some dough in the bottom of the pie. So what we're going to do now is just spoon in the filling. There we go. So spread it around so it all gets in there. Okay, and with that step done, we need to do more wildly unsuccessful pastry rolling in order to make a lid to go on the top. Now, if you actually look at the recipe book in What Remains of Edith Finch, you'll see the pie has sort of like a covering of little pieces of dough that have been cut out to resemble leaves. And when I first saw this recipe, I thought, oh, that's what I have to do then. Then I read the text, and it says specifically about cutting slits in the lid of the pie. So that makes me think that actually what I have to do is just roll it out into a sheet, stick it on the top, and then cut slits, and that's the lid of the pie. So the text and the image don't really match up, but given that sort of pastry is not my specialty, I'm gonna go with the simpler option. At least I think it's the simpler option of just rolling out a lid. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Shit. Okay, so you might have just seen for yourself there, but what I did was I rolled out the pastry, I tried to put it over the top to see how well it would fit, and then it tore and landed in the filling, which meant that the underside was covered in apple goo, and I didn't really want to pull it off and start rolling it out again in case we got a terrible, awful mess. So instead I left it on, and what we've been left with is a terrible, awful mess. We've kind of got these sort of seismic plate lines running around our crust. But hey ho, it is what it is. What I'm going to do now is cut out some sort of steam vents here in the pie to let the steam get out as it cooks. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be ugly either way, but maybe it'll taste nice. I'm really not very good at pastry. Okay, so here we go. We've got our steam vents. The oven is up to speed and it's going in right now. Right, so that pie is now going to sit in the oven for 10 minutes at gas mark 8, and then I'm going to drop it down to gas mark 4 for another 35 to 45 minutes according to the recipe, until it's golden brown on top. So watch this space, I guess. Oh boy, okay, alright. Okay. So, those fault lines I mentioned in the pie earlier, definitely a structural problem. Like I say, pastry, not my strong point. It's also slightly burnt on the edges and we got sort of some molten runoff, but it certainly smells nice, even if it looks crap. I'm going to let this cool down a bit and then we're going to see what it actually tastes like and whether it's raw on the underside. Good times. Right, so the pie's been cooling for quite a while now, and to be honest with you, well, it's collapsed there and it's still looking pretty sad, and what's more, it's still a lot hotter than I'd like it to be, but to be honest, if I don't try and get it onto a plate now, I'll never get this episode out on time. So, with that in mind, oh god, wow, here comes a plate. Pray for my hands. Ow, 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 ow. Son of a bitch. How else can I do this? Ah. Okay. If I get this jar of coffee beans, I can, in theory, yes. Thanks, coffee beans. So here is an apple pie from What Remains of Edith Finch. Whether it is any good or not is another matter entirely. So I'm going to get another plate. And we'll cut into it and see how it goes. Whoa. There. That holds together better than I thought it would. Especially since it's still really, really warm. And I'm cutting it a bit early, to be perfectly honest. But hey, let's get a fork involved. So, here's a fork full of pie. Let's see if it's any good. It's fine. Like, the pastry's not great. It's just a bit bland. Like the apples are delicious. The tartness of the Granny Smiths really cuts through all the kind of the sugar and the cinnamon and everything is in there. So the filling's really tasty. It's just like, I don't know. Hold on. Just feels a bit like the. Yeah, like it's fine. It's like If I went round to someone's house and they gave that to me, I'd be perfectly happy with it. It was just like, it's a little bit bland, if I'm perfectly honest. But the good news is, it doesn't appear to have killed me. So, that's good. Although, to be honest, I don't know how long it takes for lethal apple pie to kick in. So anyway, thank you very much for joining me on this edition of Chiodini's Kitchen. It was fun, even though I think I enjoyed making it more than I enjoyed eating it. Like, it was nice when the house smelt really good and kind of buttery and like stewing apples and stuff like that. And the pie itself is like, is fine. It's just, it's not my favourite thing I've ever made. But anyway, maybe you'll make it and you'll be able to improve it over what I did there. Let me know if you do, actually, because that would be interesting. And even if you don't, please do keep those recipe suggestions coming in, because they are really, really handy. Because there are lots of recipes I'm learning. I know that we've been doing the show for ages, but like, I'm genuinely learning that, yeah, there really are a lot of recipes tucked away in games, and I need your help to find them. That was a good link, wasn't it? Anyway, so there are plenty more videos for you to watch from Eurogamer. Some of them should be on screen now, so click one of those. Do like and subscribe, because it really helps us out. Thank you very much for watching, as ever. And yeah, have a lovely day.